Greetings from Chadron State College and welcome to the FARcast. This is our first episode, and basically what we're going to try to do with this is it's a podcast where our mission is to get to know the people of CSC better. Today's guest is Dr. Kurt Kinbacher. I'm Alex Helmbrecht, and I'm joined today by Daniel Binkard. We both work in college relations. Dr. Kurt Kinbacher, an associate professor of history. What does that mean? Is that how you introduce yourself right off the bat?
No. Usually you say, hi, I'm Kurt.
Okay. I just didn't know, once you receive that doctor status, do you tell that to everyone? Is it included on your correspondence?
Well, like right away, it's like, whoa! But after a while, I tell my students, and some of them actually listen, you said that it's an anthropology experiment, because I teach those classes as well. It's like, what's the culture of Chadron State College, or all colleges, or are we a rank society?
Sure.
They try to figure out how to address me.
Yeah, I think that's kind of an interesting thing to navigate at times. I know that I've been referred to as in emails like, Dear Dr. Helmbrecht, thank you for sending the notice about the cancellations. And so it almost seems like it's just part of the culture that students want to engage with the professionals of the campus, and so they're just being respectful.
Yeah, and how they become respectful. It could be any number of ways. I've had students who experiment with calling me by my first name until they need a letter of recommendation, and then the conversation changes. But it's I think hard for them too. Who's a Mr. or a Ms. or how do they want to be addressed? But,
right.
You generally don't go around, hey, associate professor.
That's true. Or, Mr. Director.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. So you mentioned anthropology. You also teach world history in courses in the ancient world and East Asia. Can you elaborate on those a little bit? Kind of give us the quick synopsis of what you do.
Of that part of the world since the beginning of time. That's about it. I start at Big Bang and work my way forward.
And that occurred in East Asia, right?
Just west of that, I think.
Oh, okay.
In many ways, I was hired to, world history is such a big box. So fundamentally, when they were advertising for this position, Dr. Smith and Dr. Nesham were already in place, and they advertised for the rest of the world that they didn't address, and East Asia was one of my strong points. Comparatively, if you think about what you can do at a teaching level, and so that's always been a fascination of mine, and a lot went on there. It's not, or still does really. It's not the first one of these big urban-based agriculture societies, but they never lose track of their history there, and so it makes them really exciting to study.
So teaching about East Asia in a place such as Chadron, Nebraska, what are some of the similarities?
Well, they're agrarian, at least as they start. And when I was just talking about China before I came over here today, and making comparisons is China emerges in their Yellow River Valley, which is low soil, and most of our students are from around here and know about Iowa and eastern Nebraska, what the soils look like. Some people are from Washington State. Palouse is low soil. They understand that kind of stuff, pretty readily. The climate is similar. We're on a very similar latitude. Just trying to, you can build those comparisons. The space can be imagined, I think. The culture is not readily imaginable. But I think it's still important for Nebraska. The second and third largest economies in the world after ours are China and Japan, and they are historically, in recent history, big markets for Nebraska products. So knowing about them is probably a good thing. I think we want to continue to sell beef and beans and
certainly.
Kawasaki parts, things like that.
Definitely. There is that connection. How many times have you traveled to China and Japan?
Just once. That's a long way away.
Sure.
Yeah, so no, I've not traveled extensively in Asia, but I have been over there and really enjoyed my stay. People are lovely, very, very polite people.
Nice. That's another similarity to Nebraska.
That's true. Polite, and the tendency to be quiet. Another characteristic that when people from outstate come to Nebraska, the students aren't talking because, well, they're being polite. The way that they modeled. So until they get to know you, people are quiet.
Sure. So cultural anthropology is another one of the areas that you teach. Can you kind of explain that? What's the elevator speech on what that is? What is anthropology?
Anthro is human. Ology is the study of. It's the study of existing societies.
Okay.
How it comes down to I like it. I think it's a really fun class to teach, and it's not. My PhD's in history. My minor field was anthropology. I have the one credit over the minimum of anthropology to be teaching at the undergraduate level. So, I was excited to have an opportunity to, even deal with it on a regular basis. But it's, when the discipline started, they were studying so-called primitive people because they thought that modernity in the late 19th century, when the disciplines found it, was going to overtake all of these other cultures and we'd all be assimilated into some sort of Western amalgamation. But it's not really worked out that way. So it's, looking at the culture through the window that culture is.
Okay.
Which, in Chadron is, the culture we can study is Chadron State College because it has a culture as well. And then we make comparisons to other world cultures through, the kind of the concepts and constructions of, avoid things like ethnocentrism and think relativistically if you're trying to figure out how, Japanese people view the outside world, try to think like a Japanese person, which in true terms would mean you go to Japan to hang out for a really long time and observe. But so our observations are on campus.
Okay. So how does a Chadron State College student or a Chadron State College employee, how do they think or view the world? What are the explanations given in your class?
Well, I think they're uncovering the explanations because I'm not going to lecture them on what the rules of our society are because there are unspoken rules. There are spoken rules and there's unspoken rules. And, the spoken rules are pretty easy to come by. I mean, they're Post-it, don't bring your guns to class. I'll write on the, please put your cell phones away. On the syllabus, there are rules. My rule is respect, but then I publish all the other rules that are required of an academic society that I'm asked to put on my syllabus. The ones that I think are interesting for them are what are the unspoken rules. So this last week, they could devise their own experiments, but some students kind of if you don't know what else to do, hang out in front of a door and watch the rules. Watch for the rules.
Yeah, they'd probably be in action.
Well, just think of, politeness. Action, opening the door or not. Again, and there's also time of day, and if people are scrambling to get to their classes on time. But, there are certainly rules that we negotiate, and these are enculturated, and we've learned these, and we kind of unpack, what they are. At least to start, that's the first thing we've been accomplishing. Later on, we'll talk about stratification, social stratification, if it exists. The American idea is that we're flat. Everyone's the same, egalitarianism, which is like a noble thing, but it's more complex than that. Just think of, students come in as freshmen and they, by the last semester they're seniors, there's a difference. Does it matter to the students? I'm not sure, so I let them, kind of get that idea. I think they know. I don't think they necessarily lord it over people. Same thing goes on in the faculty ranks. In Asia and Japan, we would, if we were to meet, or I was to meet, say Dr. Ryan, we would bow to each other. He would bow not very deeply, and I would bow a little bit more deeply than him, just based on rank and status. We don't do that here, but there's still behaviors that might be observable.
Sure.
So.
And have you noticed, I guess, a change in those sort of unspoken social rules throughout your career as a professor here?
No. I mean, I've only been here 6 years.
So
I mean,
they
that's not,
generally kind of stay the same.
well, I mean, that's not very long in times of cultural history.
Sure.
Yeah, I've talked to some people are here for a really long time, including people who are students and come back and then work here, and they remember their days as students before cell phones, and how it was as you're going down the double walk, and everyone is hello walk, and now everyone's going. And there are unspoken rules about that too.
Sure.
But I mean, 6 years is culture moves at a pretty rapid pace, but not we're observing. I don't think that fast. So I've not yet.
Well, we may have to check with you in another 6 years.
Well, we'll see.
So you mentioned earlier you got your PhD. That was at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln.
Yes.
And you have 3 degrees from UNL.
2.
Oh, 2. Okay. So do you consider yourself a Husker or an Eagle?
Yes.
Good answer.
You can be both. The identity is also part of my work, and the identities are not. I mean, they can shift. It's it's not quite code switching, but I mean, on any given day, you are a Chadron State Eagle. Here we are. I'm a taxpayer in Nebraska, a citizen of Nebraska. I went to the University of Nebraska, and grew up in Lincoln. Absolutely, I'm a Cornhusker, but I'm also an Eagle. And a whole lot of other things, depending on what hat I need to put on that day or where I am. If I traveled abroad, I'd be, some tall American guy, tallish. If you go to Japan, you're tall.
I need to go visit there then.
I think you do. I would recommend it to everybody.
Kurt, when did you know that you wanted to teach?
I'll let you know. Well, that's I didn't plan on doing this. But I think what is Dr. Ryan says it sometimes. We don't really know what they're going to do after they graduate for jobs. The jobs aren't invented yet. So I think when I was growing up, the concept was you'll have 5 careers. I don't know that everything I did is really a career. So after undergraduate, I thought I wanted to go to law school, but I wasn't sure. So I got a job as a paralegal. Then I was sure. I really thought that researching law was fascinating, but the practice of law required business acumen that I hadn't developed and didn't think I was capable of, and went on to start an education career in public education and got those credentials, but then drifted into youth work, drop-in youth work and 4-H bicycle camp and other stuff. So I didn't actually teach in the classroom, and I don't think I really wanted to at that time. And then when I was in my mid-30s, I thought I needed to quit being a bike messenger, which pays way better than youth work, and get a handle on things. So I went back to grad school when I was almost 40 and did the master's. And then I was taught right after that and was sure. I mean, that was the right course. I was ready. I don't think I could have sit still when I was in my early 20s to do graduate school. I needed to paint houses for a while.
So it kind of took you a while to find your career, but now that you've found it, you're comfortable with it. What do you enjoy most about it?
I like to interact with students. I like to be in the classroom, and I like to meet students about academic things in the library or in my office hours. I mean, what drives it is that's rewarding for me. Okay. That's fun for me, and that allows me to read extensively about these subjects and stay abreast of things. Yeah, if you're going to become a professor, it's still pretty much driven because you enjoy the interactions with students.
Sure.
You get to see them grow so fast intellectually. That's what I tell them when they're freshmen. It might seem like a lot of reading now, but you're going to read like multiply, geometric growth in your reading capacity by the time you're a senior.
And one of the things you enjoy studying is Mari Sandoz, and you have involvement with the Mari Sandoz conference and the Pilster lecture series. Talk a little bit about that.
One of the reasons I was excited when this job opening came up and thought I'd apply for it is the Sandoz Society is housed over in the former library, the really cool building that was who's the rich guy? That was a Carnegie Library, wasn't it?
I think it was in that style. It wasn't specifically
Okay.
a Carnegie Library, but yeah, it followed those
Okay,
cues.
so they went for it.
Yeah.
That's what libraries look like, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'd been to the conference when I was working on my PhD, and I said, well, that's a pretty good thing. And actually, my advisor was the PhD advisor was doing the programming for it when I came back here. And then, well, he said maybe I should do it. So, once your advisor, always your advisor. I was excited to take on those administrative tasks, although I'm not the best at administrative tasks, but we got some good speakers coming in, and every year there's a theme behind this. And, the Pilster family was so generous when they donated the proceeds of their ranch sale to, finance all of these, amazing opportunities for students we bring in people, really big shot scholars to come in. This year's Pilster lecturer is Charles Postel, who is a historian of renown about the populist era, that agrarian political revolt from the 1890s and the early 1900s. I've never heard him speak, but his writing is fabulous. And I've been corresponding with him to get him out here, and he's like just such a gentleman and easy to work with. And he won, the Bancroft Prize, which is like our version of the Pulitzer. I mean, he's the big shot. So we're just excited to bring someone of that caliber onto campus, and they're just so excited to come here and talk about what they do. So we got him coming Thursday the 19th at 7:30 in the ballroom for free.
Get that plug in.
Y'all come.
All right. That is September 19th.
September
right?
19th,
Okay.
yeah. So, he is a world-class historical scholar coming to, give a lecture on what he knows and loves best. And he's going to pull it in, because the Sandos world is, built, if you're thinking about old Jules and when Mari was, living in this part of the world during this era. So he's going to try to pull it into, the local as well. So I think he's excited to come here. And then on Friday, all day Friday the 20th, we have speakers coming in. They're going to start the day with another populist scholar from the University of Nebraska, Kearney, he's talked here before. He's great. He is Jeff Wells. And then at 10, we're trying to get this so that the students can come and go as their class schedule, because they can just drop in. It's free to the students. Mary Clay Jones, who's a professor of English here, and Chris Steinke, who's a professor of history at Kearney, are going to do a little panel about one of the books she wrote about politics. So that should be interesting. And then at 11, Maria Munoz, who is a historian of Latin American populism from Susquehanna University out in Pennsylvania. She has some familiarity with Nebraska. She did her master's at UNL, and we're glad that she's coming out to join us. So that will give a different view of global populism. Some say we're in a populist era globally of leadership right at the moment. So there might be some parallels that people can ask questions about. At 1:30, we took a little different bent. We're bringing in Graham Christensen, who's he's a farmer. He's in Nebraska. He lives out in Oakland, Nebraska. Said, I'm going to come, even though I should be harvesting. But, he's got a couple of things going on. He's about regenerative agriculture here on the Great Plains, and got a little corporation called Revolt, which is, it's the volts, the important thing. It's about solar power. I mean, how do you generate electricity to run your operations in an affordable way and in a sustainable way? So it should be pretty exciting. I hope we're able to draw some of the rangeland folks. And I invited the FFA over at Chadron High, but, class hour, I'm not sure what's going to go down. And then rounded out with a panel led by Dave Nesham, my colleague in history, with, he's there, but mostly it's his students who are doing the talking. So a panel of Chadron students at 3 o'clock. And then if anyone needs something to do Saturday morning, 9:30 at the Bean Broker, Lisa Pollard, who is another scholar from our state, who's going to come and talk about populism and Sandos. So that rounds it out. That's more than you wanted to know, but that's the full program.
No, I think it's interesting. It really has something for a lot of different academic disciplines, and I'm sure that a lot of students are interested in at least one of those lectures.
And any of my students out there, remember, you can go and write it up for extra credit.
That always helps the attendance.
Absolutely. What dates are those again?
The Pilster lecture is on the 19th of September. The Sandoz conference on campus is all day Friday over in the Hando Center. And then Saturday there is a 9:30 lecture. Get some coffee and see what Lisa Pollard has to say.
And all of those are free? And
For
open?
students, they are free and open.
Okay.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Yep, absolutely. And for the public, the Pilster lecture is free and open, and the Beanbroker event is free and open. Otherwise, if you want to come for the full program, there's lunch included. It's not particularly onerous. I don't know I think $50.
And they can contact you if public's interested?
They can go to the Mari Sandoz Heritage Society and they can register.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I'm sure that there'll be someone there who would take their money at the door as well. But it'd be easier. We know who to, invite. How many people for lunch if they register in advance. But we won't turn people away.
Okay. Good. And how many years has the conference been going on? Do you know?
Well, since long before I got here. I mean, there are like posters back from they had like George McGovern here, and it might have been early 2000. But sometime in the 1990s. Originally, the Sandoz Society was housed over in Gordon, and then eventually it finds its way to, our campus. As a historian, I should have a more definitive set of dates. I don't.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I think I want to say the Hando Center opened in the early 2000s.
It might have been, yeah, early 2000 sounds about right.
Yeah. Wonderful building, though. And
Yeah.
if people haven't had a chance to go through it, it's fantastic. The coffee gallery down in the basement is really good, and there's always interesting art shows going on in there. So.
And Trudy Denham in the art department, her work is on display right now.
Yeah.
And it's as an art critic, which it's outstanding. But take that with I don't know much about art, but I'm sure she's good. I mean,
It is fascinating to see that working in sand, because we haven't seen that
Yeah.
kind of work, at least not in the last few years here.
Yeah.
It's exciting to see that variety.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot different than last year. When Mary and Laura, also in the art, put up their stuff. I mean, they were working in painting and photography. So it's fun to be on this campus because there's so many different disciplines and talents.
Mm-hmm.
So
Definitely.
it'll be up for a while. It'll be up. I don't have the exact dates, but everyone should walk through, have a look.
Yeah, certainly, and even with the Sheldon art exhibit that's open in M Hall right now, there's a Bierstadt over there, which if you've ever been to the National Portrait Gallery in Washington D.C., they have that huge one of I think it's the Sierra Nevada, and with the big couch in front of it, and that one's not here, but there is one of his pieces over there, which is really wonderful.
And he painted out here too. I mean, he's got Lakota villages, and I think he's got a chimney rock in there even. So.
Yeah. So, Kurt, one of your other interests, you even wrote a book on it, was human migration. Can you talk a little bit about that, and specifically kind of in Nebraska?
Yeah, I wrote a book. Those days. Kind of what drives my scholarly interest is both migration and place. And what I tell students is that land shapes lives. I mean, part of our culture develops around our economies, which are initially driven by land. And sometimes people get like these really deep connections to place, and their identity gets wrapped around it. And you certainly see that around here. I mean, people who've been here for generations, or how long you been here? Oh, forever. And it really kind of generates a sense of pride and belonging. And but people are just mobile, and it's always just amazed me. Just think about human settlement on the earth, walking out of Africa, and any zone that a human being can live in is populated. And what causes people to pick up and move? I think there's a lot of rich scholarship that an interest in it. I mean, they have to quit being who they are and sort of, and find a new place. Sometimes because kind of when immigration scholars think of it as like a push and a pull. So how do people get to Nebraska? Well, some people come because they're refugees. I mean, whatever is going in their home place is not good, and they're coming out of sheer fright to get away. And then some people are pulled here, and it's usually a combination of the two. So the idea is there's opportunity here. It could be economic opportunity. It could be educational opportunities for their children. So these things that draw people into it, and it's never ending. It's not just modern immigration into a built United States. But if you think about Lakota people, they were pulled onto the plains because of this big, huge protein reservoir of bison, and built a culture that they was similar intellectually to the one they had in Minnesota when they were wild rice gatherers into buffalo culture. Same thing happened when Europeans began joining. Well, even if you look at the people already in America that settled Nebraska, they're kind of the pattern is this lateral movement. So people that are here, I mean, if we look at the census, you're going to find Ohio, Illinois, Pennsylvania, kind of that latitude thing we were just talking about with China. It makes sense if you're going to be a farmer. You understand the seasons at least. And then when Europeans begin dropping in, and that's about the same time, it's they're also latitudinal, or at least climate zone. Got a lot of Germans, Danes, Swedes, some people from Iceland. I can't imagine there. Well, there's that one. What is it? One little former town down on Highway 2. Has anyone been? Ringing any bells? Is there like a historical marker? This town was founded by people from Iceland on the railroad, and I'm sure they just absorbed themselves into the surrounding Danish population. I guess Irish. I mean, but you're not. There's some Italian names on campus. My inclination is they didn't come to farm, but mine out in Wyoming or something. But people are finding those patterns into places where they're presume they'll do better, and that there's some at least spatial familiarity. Like the German Russians came and brought their turkey red wheat because it grows here. So those patterns are pretty amazing to me, just to see, and just the way they settle. I mean, when I was doing some research, and when I was a graduate student, we took some counties that were settled by. Some of the land in Nebraska was given to the railroads essentially as payment for them to build the roads, and then they sold it to settlers. And we could trace that land at the time, and not the homestead land yet. That's been digitized now, but you'll find entire villages or like little sections of farms in Clay County, Nebraska, and they're all from the same place in Ohio or the same place in Russia. It's just kind of these communities that pick up and move for the opportunity.
Yeah, that's interesting. I suppose it makes sense. I mean, even now you would feel comfortable being surrounded by family or friends or people you grew up with. And so when you're starting a settlement, you want to be surrounded with some type of familiarity.
And that works the same way with the Vietnamese population that moved to Nebraska after the Vietnam War ends. That whole country, the Republic of Vietnam, ceases to exist, and some people flee, and they get resettled. Each of the 50 states takes some. A lot of them congregate into Nebraska because it doesn't look at all like Vietnam, but there are advantages. They're urban. By this time, they're not going to take up rice farming in Nebraska, nor could they get the land. But homes are affordable, education system strong, the economy is generally pretty good. I mean, there is opportunity that continues to draw people globally into our area. There's a pull to it. Immigration's a difficult thing, especially if people come as refugees. They don't really have much. But typically speaking, then second generation, kind of the pattern, and this is true for most of American immigration history, the first generation, they struggle. I mean, they get established. They don't starve. It's really their children who are going to live those dreams their parents had in mind. They're going to get education. They're going to find careers, and kind of this mobility launching of that first generation. So really, they set up their children. in many ways, and that's also a really cool story.
Yeah, I've always just thought how lucky I am that things were settled in my life prior to me being born, and so it really, your parents set you up for success, and you're so right. They want you to have the success that they never could, or that they didn't have, and so seeing that in action with immigration is wonderful.
And we call that privilege. It's like I grew up in a family that there was no question I was going to go to college. They just planned for it. Well, my dad was an academic, but his parents weren't, and their parents didn't speak English. So it just kind of works its way forward generationally.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the power of place. Once you are able to establish yourself in a place, a lot of good things can happen.
Sure.
And then if they're not, people move on because that's what we do.
Right. Now, one of the items you mentioned was mobility and kind of cruising along Highway 2. I think for anyone who knows you, they know you're not cruising along in a Chevy Malibu. You're on two wheels and on a bicycle.
I bicycled that road.
Yeah. How important is bicycle to you, or bicycling to you? And talk a little bit about just that as part of your life. I mean, it's got to make going to meetings across the state a little bit longer.
It does. It does. But, in the summer, you got all the time in the world as an academic. Our classes in the summer are online. You can do that anywhere. Sometime I've always had a bicycle. I mean, I think most kids grow up, learn how to ride a bike. I had a paper out when I was a kid, back when kids had that, and I had a very great big black Schwinn, and I'd ride down the middle of the street and throw papers on people's roofs.
I remember
it wasn't the plan, but they got up there.
That was the best job.
And then, with that money, I bought a 10-speed, and that was like really cool. And I have always loved to ride. And when I was 14, my other buddies and I told our parents, we're going to ride all the way to Colorado. And our parents said, no. But it kind of never left my mind. And, then when I was in my early 20s, I'm kind of a restless person. I mean, I don't sit still very well. And I was thinking I wanted to run marathons. And then I hurt my knee. Because I have the body of a bear, not a marathon runner. And then I got a bike and just continued. And, some people ride their bikes long distances with all their camping gear on it, and that looked sort of intriguing. So I bought a bike and strapped a bunch of camping gear on it and rode across Wisconsin. I was living in Minnesota at the time, and that was very satisfactory. And then I just kept riding. So in 1987, I rode across the country because... Well, maybe you've seen those guys. They ride Highway 20.
Yeah.
I'm on a listserv. I'm in an organization where I host cross-country bicyclists, and they tell me their stories, and I tell them how to get across Nebraska without too many flat tires, and where the good camping spots are, and if you get to so-and-so town, you want to eat in so-and-so restaurant, and the manager of the Ainsworth grocery store is a cyclist. If you're having a hard time, he can help you out. When I was in my 20s and 30s, early 30s, I rode a lot of tours. I would, as a bike messenger, so I would resign from my job and, spend 3 weeks riding around Europe. 3 weeks, 3 months. 3 months riding around Europe, and then, what I find is people riding across the country are either in their 20s or in their 50s and 60s. So I think you guys know what happens in between. A lot of things happen, but it's not recreation. You got other midlife things you got to accomplish, and then people take off again. So I'm I am at that other end. I am taking off again. So the last 4 years I've been touring extensively again. A lot of it in Nebraska, but I get farther afield than that. So it's just enjoyable, and satisfies my need to move and see things, and it's actually not expensive to do it. What question did you ask?
Well, just in a roundabout way to get you to talk about the bike ride and how much you enjoy it. And What's a typical day when you're touring? How far do you ride? You look for a place to camp. If it's raining, what do you do? Just stop over and find some shelter?
Well, I have a job now, so
in the
so I
summer,
get to sleep indoors. I mean, the kind of the difference between when I was in my 20s, when you'd actually leave your job and when you got to, you're on per diem. You got to budget it out, and if there's going to be a crappy day, you're going to be out in the rain. Today, I can stay in a hotel, which is really nice.
Yeah,
but
sure.
a typical day. I just turned 60, so I'm thinking hard about, I got to ride across the country again because I only got 19 more years statistically left. I better do it while I'm standing well. Comfortably right now, 60, 70 miles. Some days, like when the wind's blowing really hard and you're riding into it, it's like, none.
Yeah.
Or, 30 to the next town, and I'm going to, just take the rest of the day. But, 60, 70 miles every day is pretty comfortable. I can still bang out 100 occasionally if needed. It's, like the first 40 miles come pretty easy. Can be a little bit of work after that. And then when you get above 70, it sometimes it's not as much fun.
Time for the ice bath.
Nothing like that, but if there's a shower on the other end of it, that kind of makes it worthwhile sometime.
Certainly.
And then Nebraska's great because a lot of the little towns have campgrounds like in town, which is the state parks are fantastic too. But if you're just thinking about Nebraska, camping in like Cody, you got a nice campground, you got a bar and grill next door, go get a cheeseburger, see what the locals are up to. I mean, they're kind of eating your way across Nebraska on cheeseburgers.
Well,
not for everybody.
You're burning the calories.
I think we tried to calculate that once when I was like younger and rode even more miles. It's like when I rode cross country, 75, 80 was average. I don't know how we came up with this, but you just really can't eat that much. Well, you can, but maybe 6,000 calories a day if you're really hot on it. I think my metabolism slowed a little bit since then, but you need to eat, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So when the people come through that are touring, it's like, they want food, they want a shower, they want to do their laundry, and they want some Wi-Fi, and everything else doesn't matter. Kind of gets down to, just a few basics of what, human comfort could be.
Yeah, it's interesting that Wi-Fi has kind of elevated itself into a necessity.
Well, that's true. Well, when I rode across the country in 1987, no Wi-Fi. I just wrote postcards, and then like my dad at work had a map and put a postcard. And people at my work that I was coming back to put postcards.
Where you were at.
But I didn't. I think I called a few people over the course of a couple months, but. Phone calls were expensive too. You're looking for a phone booth and all the quarters, and so no, that is a little bit different scene because some people are navigating just by their things we call phones right now, which aren't always accurate. And a Chinese young man riding from, I think Southern California, he was heading to Boston, and I still don't know what road he was on, but he didn't have wide tires, and he was on some dirt road that appeared to be a shortcut on the map, and he couldn't ride any farther. And, some nice rancher, and, that's the great thing out here. Yeah. Put him in a truck and took him back to the highway and, told him how to get to Chadron.
Oh, that was nice. You got that helping hand.
Yeah, that happens a lot. I mean, people are just very kind.
So one of the classes that I think you're currently working on developing, or maybe it already is developed, is a bike ride across America or parts of America. You'd like to maybe start that. Is it next summer or the summer after?
Well, this is still not fully approved.
Oh, okay.
But it's been run up the flagpole. I decided that I needed to ride across the country again, and I went and so it's a little bit. The logistics, to make it easy, you leave here, ride east to Washington, D.C., take a train all the way across to the other side, Portland or Seattle, and then ride back here. Simple, right?
Yeah, in theory.
In theory. So I'm doing it. I'm leaving. I'm leaving in May of 2021, and I'm going to ride. And I went and saw my dean and said, could this be a class? And I thought, well, this isn't going to go anywhere. He said, yeah. And Charles thought, well, probably. Risk management has said probably, and needs a little bit more approval, and then I need to see if students even care.
Wow.
And so that's where that's at. I don't know what's going to happen.
Well,
I've got
interesting.
I have some help. The Professor Jones and Professor Jones, I ride with them quite a lot. Have said that they would, if we can get it together, also ride.
So it would be kind of a interdisciplinary
academic bike ride across the United States.
Wow.
If it happens.
If it happens, well, I mean, I think that there would definitely be interest for it from students.
Well, we'll see. I hope that's true, but again, it's like there's more bikes this year than there have been in past years.
Yeah, I've noticed
although this
more.
is like a fantastic place to cycle. Not that many people do it.
Mm-hmm.
A few people. Dr. Ryan.
Yeah.
I see Dr. King rides. Dr. McCallum, I see coming to work on his mountain bike. But, student biking, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, good luck on it, and hopefully you can get that enrollment. And if not, maybe, like you said, you'll get a bunch of 20-year-olds, so that would be the student demographic, and maybe you'll even get some of those older students who just want to take it for fun.
Yeah, well, I'm going, whether it's a class or not. That's I leave in May 2021.
Okay, all right. Well, put it on the calendar, Daniel.
I'll send you some postcards.
See, I'm more open to the 6,000 calorie intake a day thing than the.
Can't go wrong.
So, Kurt, we have a few minutes left, and I kind of want to just do some quick hitting questions. Just to kind of help people get to know you a little bit better. You can talk about your favorites or whatever you want. But so I'm going to go through these kind of quick.
Okay, you'll get quick answers.
All right.
Lightning round.
All right, yeah, exactly. Lightning round. The FAR round or something. I don't know. We got to figure something
like that,
out for it. We need to get some
Well,
sponsorship.
if we go
maybe.
outside today, we might see some lightning rounds.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So we'll begin. What's a favorite movie of yours?
Seven Samurai.
Oh, okay. First concert you attended?
Nitty Gritty Dirt Band at the Buffalo County Fairgrounds.
In Kearney, right?
In Kearney.
If Chadron State College wasn't the name, what would you name the college?
I would rename our mascot. Not that I don't love the Eagles. I'd call us the Speed Goats.
The Speed Goats. Why is that?
Well, we got a lot of them out here. There's a lot of schools called the Eagles, and although we got Eagles too, I saw a bald and a golden this weekend. Nobody's calling themselves the Speed Goats.
That is very true. Yeah, I've always liked I think it's Delta State, their Division II school. They go by the Fighting Okra. Which I've always liked.
A speed goat could take one of those down with just one hoof.
What's one of your favorite bike rides in Dawes County?
It depends on which way the wind's blowing. I'm riding the gravel roads these days. Sometimes just riding up Ormisher Road to South Dakota, like right out Main Street onto the dirt road. That's a fun ride. There's a great little loop ride I like to do that takes me to up Country Club, over Buttermilk, Dead Horse, by the Hawthorne guy's place, up Airport Road, and then back by the airport onto the highway. Great rides. This is a fun part of the country to ride in.
What is the craziest thing that's ever happened to you on a bike trip?
Nothing ever crazy happens.
Well, that's good.
I was thinking,
That's good.
what happens that's really weird? Sometimes it's just weird, like a really good way. Like when I wandered into Hungary from what's now Slovakia, it's like the guy at the border crossing took my passport, and I thought I was in deep trouble. And then he came back because he needed to learn how to say good morning in English. And then it just got weirder. I ended up in Hungary. The quick answer, this is the lightning round. It's weird in Hungary.
Okay, all right.
And I recommend it.
We didn't get a chance to talk about some of your other interests, but I know you have other interests, fishing and playing banjo. What's one of the best fish recipes you have?
I'm a fly fisherman. I put them back, catch and release.
Okay, so the recipe is let them go.
Let them go.
Okay, and finally, this is important for anyone who works at Chadron State College or lives in Chadron. How many times have you been to the top of Sea Hill?
Well, at least 100. When I got here, I had an aging Airedale dog, but she was really active all the way through her early teens, and she wanted to be up there once a week to see what was going on. So that was one of our favorite stomping grounds when I still had her.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Kurt. Kurt, I really appreciate taking the time today and visiting with us. And you've been a wonderful guest, and thank you.
Well, thank you guys. It's been a pleasure.